All right, now we're going to look at the going solo addendum, all the things that have been added since the last time this lecture was recorded in 2017, all the things that were added in 2018 to this section. First thing we're going to look at is simplex operation. I don't remember if I've already explained this, so I will just explain this now. But simplex operation is really normal operation. It's when you're talking to someone on ham radio and you're just directly transmitting to them on one frequency. You're transmitting and receiving on the same frequency and just talking directly to the person you're talking to. Your signal is going straight from your radio to the other person's radio. And this is probably what you normally thought of anyway. Simplex operation is what most people think of when they think of how they contact on ham radio. It's just the logical thing to do. The logical thing is to directly transmit to the other person, right? There is something that's called a repeater. Which we're going to talk about in the next section, so I'm not going to explain it too much now. But as I said, a repeater is something that retransmits your signal on another frequency. Simplex exists because sometimes we don't need a repeater if we're close enough. You see, the purpose of a repeater is to extend the range of your station. So the idea is you transmit it to the repeater retransmits your signal then so that it gets even farther. It extends the range of your station so you can talk to people even farther away. And if that's confusing, just wait till we get to the repeater section. And I'm going to mention all this again in the repeater section, this first point about simplex operation, but I do need to mention it here. If we're close enough where we don't need a repeater, it's better to use simplex operation. Bottom line is, if you can use simplex operation, do it, because that way you don't tie up a repeater for someone else who needs it. So just remember that simplex exists, and use it when you can. That's the first thing. Second thing, identification. Well, let me finish writing this on the board. So when you're close enough, you don't need a repeater. You can just use simplex. All right. Second thing, identification. So as I talked about in, I believe it was last lecture, you have to identify yourself on ham radio. You have to transmit your call sign every 10 minutes, and I think it was at the end of every transmission. This even applies to test transmissions. You still have to identify during test transmissions. That's the main point of this point. So even if you're just keying up your radio, firing it up just to say, this is a test, making sure my new radio works, bye, you still have to identify your call sign. A lot of people, what they do is they just hold down the transmit button, say testing, and then they're like, okay, that's great. They didn't identify. They broke the FCC rules. Even during short test transmissions, you have to identify. Say like KD2 EOM testing, or Willy Billy 5, Willy Billy Willy testing, or something along those lines. Again, don't use Willy Billy 5, Willy Billy Willy, though. That's a bad phonetics. All right, the third and last thing, scanning on FM radios, or we'll just write scanning. What does this mean? You may have noticed in your car, you have an FM radio probably in your car. You have a scan button on that FM radio. And when you press that scan button in your car, it'll scan through the whole FM band, searching for signals so you can find stations. So if you're looking for a country music station, you might just press the scan button over and over, and your radio will find you a good country music station. It'll find all the strong stations in your area until you decide that you pick one. That's how the FM radio in your car works, or your stereo. And the scanning function in your ham radio FM radio works the exact same way. It scans the ham radio band, searching for signals so you can find stations not to listen to music on, but you can find stations to talk to. Because there are a lot of frequencies on ham radio, it takes a lot of energy to just keep pressing the next channel button over and over and over. So you have this scan function. You press it and your radio scans around, finds a strong signal. This can really help you find someone to talk to. And that's the last point for this addendum. However, I do want to make one other note before we leave this section. One more note. There are two questions that are in this section, the going solo section. There's T2B12 and there's T2A04. I want you to skip these for now. And the reason for this is because these questions talk about repeaters. We're going over repeaters in the next section, so I've decided to move these questions to the next section. So for this section, these questions will not be on the quiz until next section. Just skip them entirely for now. And with that, I am done with this addendum video. So have fun, and bye-bye.